Foundations has had a massive impact on Standard, and alongside Jumpstart, it's had a massive impact on Historic too. This video ranks the top 10 best decks to conquer the Historic meta.
Victory!
Boros Burn is the go-to deck if you want to end games fast and leave your opponents wondering what just happened. Early plays like Monastery Swift Spear and Dragon's Rage Channeler start applying pressure right away, while burn spells like Play of Fire and Bolt Wave clear blockers or just go straight for the face. In the mid game, the deck keeps the heat on with Lightning Helix and Boros Charm dealing damage while maintaining momentum. Even lands like Sunbaked Canyon ensure that you never run out of gas. The deck thrives on overwhelming opponents with speed and precision, but it falters against life gain and heavy control strategies. Boros Burn is all about blistering speed, but what happens when you come against a strategy that carefully builds towards inevitable domination? Imagine a deck that dismantles your plan while dropping colossal game-ending threats. In 9th place, Mono Blue Eldrazi is a masterclass in calculated control and overwhelming power. Early plays like Mindstone and Chalice of the Void give you rampant disruption, setting the stage for some truly devastating mid-game action. Once you've stabilised, unleash titanic threats like Emrakul the Promised End or Planeswalkers like Ugin to crush your opponent. With tools like Portent of Calamity and Null Drifter keeping your deck flowing, this strategy combines overwhelming power with surgical precision for a truly dominating game plan. The deck shines in creating massive value with its toolbox of Eldrazi and Planeswalkers, but can falter against hyper-aggressive strategies and specific hate cards. Mono Blue Eldrazi dominates with precision and power, but not every opponent relies on massive creatures to win. How about a deck that refuses to stay down, bringing back threats you thought were dealt with? In 8th place, Dimir Sorin keeps the pressure on with recursion, disruption, and relentless aggression. Early plays like Baleful Strix and Psychic Frog draw you cards and keep the tempo, while spells like Fatal Push and Stubborn Denial handle early threats. From there, recursive threats like Bloodghast keep swinging, even when your opponent thinks they're dealt with. Sorin brings the whole strategy together, cheating out gigantic vampires ahead of the curve. This deck excels at recursive threats and versatile disruption, but can be hindered by graveyard hate and aggressive decks. Dimir Sorin thrives on tempo and massive vampires, but sometimes you want to weaponize every spell you've ever cast, right? Ever wanted to play a strategy where your graveyard fuels endless barrage of value? In 7th place, Izzet Kiora is the ultimate spell-slinging powerhouse, blending tempo and efficiency to perfection. This deck kicks off with cards like Dragon's Rage Channeler and Faithless Looting, setting up the graveyard for explosive plays. But the real magic happens when cards like Dreadhorde Arcanist and Snapcaster Mage let you reuse your powerful spells, keeping the pressure on. Kiora not only filters your hand and fills your graveyard when it enters, but when it attacks, it also takes the game over by creating a massive octopus. So this deck really thrives on incremental value and tempo for efficient spells and recursion, but it can falter against graveyard hate and fast aggro decks. Izzet Kiora leverages spells for value and tempo, but what if you could turn even the smallest of artifacts into an unstoppable engine of destruction? Imagine a deck that combines precision, disruption, and massive game-winning threats. In 6th place, Dimir Artifacts proves that size isn't everything. Sometimes the smallest pieces can pack the biggest punch. Cards like Ornithopter and Emery Lurker of the Loch let you establish your board early and set up recursion. Then, draw your way into the mid-game with cards like Faultcast and Fault Monitor, which are made cheaper with the new to historic artifact lands. But then this is when the real fun really starts. Kappa Cannoneer becomes an unstoppable behemoth, while Retrofitter Foundry floods the board with tokens. And with Metallic Rebuke to disrupt your opponent, you're always a step ahead. It's a deck that proves even the smallest pieces are effective when they synergize well. This deck dominates with artifact synergies and efficient threats, but has trouble with artifact hate and aggressive decks. Dimir Artifact thrives on clever plays and intricate synergies, but sometimes you just want to outlast everything your opponent throws at you. Well, this deck doesn't just rebuild, it keeps coming back stronger. In 5th place, Abzan Sorin brings unmatched resilience to the table, ensuring the game is never over until you say so. Early game plays like Fatal Push keep things tidy, while cards like Malevolent Rumble help you to build a strong board presence. Then Sorin cheats in massive threats like Saint Elendra, or ticks up to power up your team. Add in a graveyard recursion with cards like Unburial Rites, and you've got a deck that refuses to stay down. This deck shines with graveyard recursion and mid-game board presence, but can falter against graveyard hate and fast, wide strategies. Abzan Sorin dominates with graveyard recursion, but what if you could bypass combat altogether and go straight for the win? How about a deck that rewards careful planning with unstoppable game-ending loops? In 4th place, we have 4-color Samwise Combo, which assembles infinite combos with precision and power. You'll start by digging for combo pieces with cards like Unlucky Witness and Goblin Trapfinder, while Goblin Bombardment chips away at your opponent and keeps their board in check. Once you've got a Sacrifice Outlet, Samwise and Cauldron Familiar on the board, the loop begins, gaining infinite life or dealing infinite damage with just a few cards. But the real reason this deck is so good is because cards like Ajani and Amp Raptor also allow the deck to win for a fair game plan too. This deck shines when assembling game-winning loops, but is vulnerable to disruption and requires careful sequencing to succeed. 4-color Samwise Combo wins with elegant loops and precision timing, but sometimes you just want to go big. Ever wanted to flood the board with massive threats and overwhelming power? Well, in 3rd place, Mono Green Devotion ramps into devastating plays that leave your opponent in the dust. Start off with mana accelerators like Utopia Sprawl and Delighted Halfling. Then fire up Nykthos to generate absurd amounts of mana equal to your devotion to green. From there, cards like Storm the Festival flood the board with impactful permanents, and late game threats like Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines, seal the deal. Yes, Elesh Norn is white, yes, we're technically Selesnya, but come on, it's basically mono green, okay? This deck is also able to combo off for the win when the matchup requires it. This is done by looping Izzet Kiora with Restorative Burst, gaining you infinite mana, life, and eventually damage, so long as you can find a black source. This deck dominates by creating overwhelming board states through ramp, but struggles against disruption and fast combo strategies. Mono Green Devotion creates huge board-wide threats, but what if a single creature could carry you to victory? Imagine a deck that piles on enchantments, turning even the smallest of creatures into an unrelenting powerhouse. In 2nd place, Boros Auras is explosive, resilient, and capable of ending the game in spectacular fashion. Early plays like Esper Sentinel and Light Paws give you tools to stack enchantments like Ethereal Armor and All That Glitters, turning your creatures into devastating threats. Then cards like Core Spirit Dancer keep your hand full, while Giver of Runes ensures your best creatures stay protected. This deck thrives on creating massive, resilient threats, but has trouble with mass removal and decks featuring heavy interaction. Boros Auras transforms creatures into unstoppable forces, but sometimes you just want to have a little bit of fun. Before we reveal the very best deck, let's enjoy something a little bit more playful. Feline Ferocity with a side of Tribal Synergy. That's right, our bonus fun deck of the week is Caaats. Early plays like Wilder Cattle and Leonin Vanguard build a formidable feline army, while Tribal Lords like Feline Sovereign pump your team and provide extra perks. Collected Company takes things to the next level, flooding the board with even more Caaats, and Arabo the First Fang brings the claws for a powerful late game finisher. Now Caaats are fun and all, but what if you could win the game as early as turn 2? Imagine a deck so fast and precise that even a single opening hand can spell doom for your opponent. In 1st place, this week's best deck is Priest of Gix Combo, that brings lightning fast gameplay and game-ending combos that demand respect. Take a look at this opening hand. Can you spot the turn 2 win? In a moment, I'll show you exactly how this deck makes it happen, but first, let's explore how Priest of Gix Combo operates when you don't draw a god hand. Early plays like Stitcher's Supplier and Shambling Ghast enable graveyard setup and mana ramp through sacrifice effects. Jet Medallion and Phyrexian Tower further accelerate the mana generation, while Diabolic Intent digs for combo pieces, helping to set up the perfect turn. Okay, just as I promised, this is how you can win on turn 2. Start the game with a 1-drop like Greedy Freebooter. Then drop a Phyrexian Tower on turn 2 to sacrifice it, giving you free mana and a treasure. Use the mana to slam a Priest of Gix into another Priest of Gix, then into a Chthonian Nightmare. This is leaving a single mana and a treasure remaining. Sack a priest to return a 1-drop, then use the final mana and treasure left over to drop Chthonian Nightmare again. You've now assembled the loop. Sacrificing a priest to return another priest, and then bounce Chthonian back to your hand and replay Chthonian to sack a priest to return another priest, nets you mana every single time, providing you infinite mana. Add a Marionette Apprentice into the equation, and suddenly the loop deals lethal damage too. Now sure, that's the dream turn 2 play, but the deck can pull this off rather consistently by turn 3 most games too. This deck dominates with explosive combos and unparalleled speed, but is vulnerable to graveyard hate and disruption. This new combo is insanely powerful and will probably lead to a nerf or a ban. But do you think I'm wrong? Let me know which deck you think is the best, and of course, find more historic content on the left or my most recent upload on the right.